What is going on, Pacer Nation? And welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice Pacers. We want to welcome on a very special guest from, you know him very well, Pacer Nation, from Setting the Podcast, Pacers Podcast. We got Alex Golden joining us today. Alex, man, the Pacers are almost there, man. They've officially made it to the NBA Finals. How we feeling, my man?
Well, gentlemen, I will say this. Welcome to the bandwagon. It's so fun to see so many people hopping on the Pacers bandwagon as they've made this run to the NBA Finals. And wow, it's been remarkable to see them go 12-4 over their last three series, something I don't think anybody ever expected this team to do heading into this season. But man, it's been a lot of fun, and they've got a lot of opportunities here to kind of prove how special they are, and they've done it, and they've been playing great basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Pacers and the Thunder both have the best record since the start of the new year, which is definitely exciting in itself. You said it right there, Alex. You know, a lot of people jumping on the Pacers bandwagon. Pacers are good, but I know you have covered the Pacers when they haven't been so good. You've been a fan for a long time. Doing the podcast for how many years? You've been doing it now?
Yeah, it'll be 7 years in September. So we've been doing it almost 7 years now. But yeah, it's been a lot of. We basically started the podcast. Now, I will say this. We did jump on the Pacers podcast bandwagon after the Oladipo 17-18 run, right? I had been doing some different versions of different podcasts, but I was like, I want to find something that'll stick. We were only doing like once a week. It wasn't that much. But I realized with the NBA, news goes by so quick that if you don't do a daily podcast, what you talked about on Sunday, on Thursday doesn't matter, right? There's so many things going. So, yeah, we've seen a lot of different variations of this team. Seen a lot of bad versions of this team. But, you know, through thick and thin, we're here now. And wow, I mean, it's been the last couple of years have just been so fun to watch and so fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like this unit being able to accomplish what, you know, a lot of other Pacers teams haven't been able to accomplish. I mean, from your perspective, I mean, where does this team stack upon like amongst the fan base, like where this team is for, like, I would say all-time great Pacer teams? I mean, we've seen a couple really good teams over the last 25 years, but never really seen them get to this kind of position in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably have to go back almost 30 years to say like the Reggie Miller era when they didn't make it to the NBA Finals, right? I think those teams were better than the team that actually got there. I think the team that actually made it to the NBA Finals was like a lesser version of that group just because they were older at that time. And I think Smits retired the year after, and, you know, they didn't keep Del Davis much longer, and they traded Antonio that year, and just a lot of different versions of it. But I think that the team that made it to 7 games against the Orlando Magic when Shaq and Penny were there were probably one of the best versions of this Pacers team with Reggie Miller. But when you look at this team, they're built totally different. There's not really a lot of similarities you can point to here, other than a skinny guard that can make a lot of clutch shots, being the leader of the franchise. But other than that, I would say those two teams are probably like at the top. Some might say the Brawl team, because the Brawl team, a lot of people felt like they had a chance to win a championship. Unfortunately, things didn't play out there. And then when you look at the Paul George era with Roy Hibbert, David West, George Hill, and Lance Stevenson, Danny Granger, I think everybody loved that team, but nobody actually thought they were going to get past the Heat. So I think that when you look at this group here, maybe it's a little bit of in the moment conversation, but I haven't really thought about it too much in terms of reflecting on what other teams stack up against them. But maybe you could say of the 21st century, this is by far the best team that they've assembled from top to bottom.
Awesome. Well, Alex, I think it was yesterday you made a post, and I love this post, by the way. 3 most important dates for the Pacers in the 2020s. June 24th, 2021, obviously Rick Carlisle being hired. Then you talked about February 8th, 2022, the Tyrese Halliburton one. And then January 17th, 2014, which is actually like the inaugural date that we started this podcast. So just talk to me, man, because those are obviously some huge things that have led the Pacers to where they are now. But again, like the Pacers, you know, in 2022, they were 25-57, right? So not anywhere near where they are now. What have you seen, and how cool has it been to just watch this Pacer team build the way that they have built, starting from hiring Coach Carlisle in 21 to where they are now?
When they had Rick Carlisle, it was really interesting because there was Malcolm Brogdon. Karis LeVert ended up getting traded here for the Victor Oladipo trade happened. So Karis LeVert was here, TJ Warren, Miles Turner, and Domantas Sabonis. That was your starting 5. And people were like, man, that's a pretty solid team. They had just a couple of years ago, made it to the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference under Nate McMillan. They fired him because players were tuning him out. They bring in Nate Bjorkgren for 1 year, and that was just the worst coaching hire probably in Pacer history. Couldn't get any assistants to want to be on his staff. The front office had to go out there and try to find assistants to be on his staff, and then you have Greg Foster, assistant coach, getting into it with Goga Batadze on the bench. I mean, just a complete train wreck of a season, but able to kind of figure things out. They let Nate Bjorkgren go. A smart decision by the Pacers just to move on quickly after 1 year. You don't usually see that. A lot of coaches would be bullheaded, or not coaches, front office members would be bullheaded and not want to fire their guy, because this was Kevin Pritchard's hire. Like, this is his, like, oh, I'm going to get trendy here. I'm going to go out there and get this analytics guy. And it was not a great fit. But then you get this gift wrapped to you, because Rick Carlisle, when he left Dallas, everybody thought he was going to Milwaukee. The Bucks were on the verge of losing to the Brooklyn Nets. It seemed like Mike Budenholzer had ran his course, and like all of a sudden now Rick has this great chance to go to Milwaukee, and bada bing, bada boom, they win the championship. Now Rick has to find somewhere else to go. And so Indiana opens up, and he's like, all right, I'm coming back home. And a lot of people thought he's going to kind of run this franchise back with this group here, and he's going to figure things out, because people thought this was a pretty talented team. Little did they know that Rick Carlisle was going to be the guy that kind of helped spearhead this rebuild. Without that veteran coach in there to kind of tell the front office, like, hey, look, this team's going nowhere right now. They're a very mediocre team. We've got to make some changes. So for him to kind of be like, look, if we can get our hands on Tyrese Halliburton, we got to do it. He was such a high person on their draft board back in Dallas when he was there. And I think they were like pick 12 or 14, something like that. They were never able to get him, but they really were high on him, and they wanted to get him in the draft potentially if he fell to them. So, or maybe even trade up. But the fact that Carlisle had already liked Halliburton so long ago, for him to kind of be like, okay, let's target this young sophomore guard, I think he can lead our franchise. It just puts you right there. Now you have a franchise guy to build around. And I don't think anybody expected this quick of a turnaround from Tyrese. And the way that he just kind of like launched himself into the all-star level tier, right, of players, that's what opens up another door for you to go out there and get Pascal Siakam, a guy that's not on the same timeline as Tyrese. But Rick Carlisle, with these players that they have assembled together, he saw something there special, and you have 2 all-star caliber players, now 2 all-NBA guys. And when you have that and a great coach and great surrounding players, it just shows you how far you can make it. Now, let's see if they can go out there and win a title. I mean, I don't think it's off the table. I think that they can do anything at this point. They've proven that they are, they're there to beat the odds, right? They're going to defy the odds. They're going to play their best version of themselves, and nobody's going to count on them to win, but they've always been counted out, and they always prove people wrong. So, I would say don't count the Pacers out, but it's great to see Rick Carlisle just have this faith in Halliburton, and then the front office going out there and making a move to not really like change their roster that much either by getting Pascal. I mean, everything just fell in order for him, and wow, it's just been great.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. The Pacers have always been looked down upon by everyone. They've always been put behind the 8 ball, and they will continue to be, because no one supports Indiana sports unless you're an Indiana sports fan. But I mean, you're right. Like, this team less than 5 years ago, I mean, this was a completely different team. I mean, I think outside of, maybe McConnell and Turner, I mean, this roster has done almost an entire revamp of what it is that they were. And I mean, it's worked so well in unison. I mean, Pritchard going out and getting the right players who are executing the correct system at the right time and the right pace, and it's all kind of mushed together. And do you think that it has what do you think is the biggest reasoning as to why this Pacers team is executing at the level that it is now? I know a lot of people have talked about how the NBA is kind of going away from the superstar model, where it's not always about getting superstars in the league anymore. It's about finding the right coach and the right scheme and the right players to execute that scheme. I mean, what has caused Indiana to go from being the bottom tier just a few years ago to now competing for a finals just so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point. Rick Carlisle obviously is a main factor in that, just because he has changed his coaching style so much. If you go back and look at the early Rick Carlisle teams, he's calling the plays. He's kind of like in lockstep with the point guard, like, hey, you do what I call. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And you heard him today on the Pat McAfee show. He said, I don't call plays. We don't have to worry about the OKC sound. We don't call plays. We just run a random offense. And there's just so many different cutting actions they do. And it's just part of who they are. It's in their DNA. They don't really run plays. They just know, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Every once in a while, you might see Carlisle call a play, but most of the time when he calls a play, it's let's get Pascal Siakam isolation post up and see if he can get us a basket because our offense isn't working. But I think it really comes down to Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, and Ted Wu, that front office really targeting the right players that fit this system. You trade Malcolm Brogdon for Aaron Nesmith. Nobody expects Aaron Nesmith to be anything. Credit to Aaron Nesmith. He puts in the work. He comes back a very good player, comes back even better after he gets his contract extension. They target Benedict Mather and Andrew Nembhard in the same draft class. I mean, just an incredible draft class there by them. I mean, the way that Nembhard went from being, the backup to TJ McConnell, eventually his replacement was what the kind of goal was there, to being the starting guard, I should say, next to Halliburton. And it's just like, wow, I don't think they envisioned that, but just the way that you go out there and identify a defensive-minded guy that can play the point guard position and put him next to Halliburton because he can defend at such a high level. And obviously there's other guys like TJ McConnell was already on this team. Getting Thomas Bryant when you lose both your centers at the beginning of the season, like nobody knew what they were going to do. They were trying to bring in like Moses Brown and all these different versions of centers that they could just to like make it work. And it was like, this is not going to happen. And then you find Tony Bradley at the end of the year that actually was a significant pickup and played significant minutes against the New York Knicks because he was able to put a body on Mitchell Robinson and just make it difficult. So they just know how to identify the right players. And I didn't even talk about the draft class from a year ago with Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd. I mean, Ben Shepherd was fantastic in his first season, having to play significant minutes when Mathurin went down with that labrum injury. And then Jarris Walker, he's shown time and time again, like, hey, if you throw him into the situation, he can figure it out. And then Obi Toppin, they got him basically for nothing, 2 second-round picks. I mean, they just found the right pieces to put this team together. And when you're like, hey, we're going to play fast, we're going to run, we're going to shoot a lot of threes, they really identified that. But I give these guys a lot of credit on the roster for not only getting in shape and playing the style, but really buying into we got to get better defensively. If this team was the same defensive level they were last year, they're not in the NBA Finals. They've taken their defensive level to a totally different place that it was the year before. So I give them a lot of credit for just buying into that and really taking that stride to, hey, we want to get better. And it starts with Tyrese. I mean, Tyrese this year defensively, night and day difference. I mean, I know he's healthier, but man, just the way he's shooting the gaps, playing great off-ball defense, getting blocks at times, it's just, this is a guy that's bought into the defensive side of things, and it's paid off. So long answer there. I do apologize, but just a lot of things to talk about when it comes to like how this team was kind of built.
Yeah, and obviously we saw last year, guys like Nembhard, guys like Nesmith kind of having to take on bigger roles. And, it kind of felt like as it came along, you started finding your core, when you're heading to the playoffs and down the stretch of the season. But my question for you, Alex, we saw obviously the Pacers Eastern Conference Finals last year. How valuable do you think it was for this young team to really be able to kind of go into some of these places this year, knowing that they know what it takes, and even that Boston series, I know they did get swept, but they were in those games. So how valuable do you think it was for this team and just their cohesion, I guess, and their maturity going from what they did and where they almost went last year to this season now, only a year later, now they're in the NBA Finals?
I just think going through stuff and having experience with these games, right? It's the best way to learn. It's very similar to like if you're on a job, right? And you're trying to learn how to do something and someone tells you how to do it. Okay, that's one thing. But when you actually get your hands on it and do it yourself, you're like, okay, this is how it's done. And so I think the Pacers, they had their growing pains. I mean, they struggled with a Milwaukee team without Giannis and an injured Damian Lillard in their first run in the playoffs. But they still won that in 6. They advanced to play the New York Knicks. They're down 2-0. They end up winning all their home games, forcing a game 7, and then shooting lights out in game 7. Then they go to Boston, and they probably should have won game 1. This is just like, it put so much of an emphasis on what it takes to win. And I think it kind of showed them like, okay, this is the sacrifices we have to make as players with our rotation, with our spot, because if we want to be the best version of ourselves, we can't have an ego. We can't let that get in the way. And I've got to sacrifice so player X can do this and whatnot. So them just going through it, it definitely paved the way because it gave them a little bit of a taste of what success feels like. And so they wanted to go back, and everybody called this the Atlanta Hawks 2021 run when they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Bucks and then flamed out the next year. Nobody believed the Pacers would be able to repeat this. They thought they got lucky because the first two teams they played were dealing with a lot of injuries. But they kind of bucked that trend, and now they're in the NBA Finals. And I think this team was hungry. They were ready to prove people wrong, and they took the right strides. I know it was a slow start. They got off to a 10-15 start, but they figured things out once they got everybody healthy and really bought into these are the things we have to do to get back to the NBA Eastern Conference Finals and prove to people that this was not a fluke. And obviously we saw it in this run, but they turned the page, and I think nothing would have got them there except for that experience they had last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, it feels great for anyone that is a Indiana Pacers fan to be able to experience this, and because I know a lot of people who have been fans of this team for a long, long time. And I mean, it can't feel any better than for someone like a Miles Turner, who has, again, been on this team for a decade and is basically the last guy from the Indiana Pacers from that Paul George era, the last time that a lot of people thought that the Pacers had a legitimate chance to actually make it to the finals. And now he's getting to go to his first finals as, the veteran of the group and, the hometown guy here. So, I mean, how does it feel? How would you imagine it feels for a guy like Miles Turner, who's been through the thick of it with this organization for so long?
I would say the only word that comes to mind is emotional. If you watched his post-game interview that he did with Pat Boylan, where he was saying Indy and then have the crowd chant back Anna, and they just went back and forth and back and forth. And then when he talked on TNT and his voice got a little shaky there at the end, you could tell like this just meant so much to him. I don't think he had the greatest series against the Knicks. He was, in foul trouble in that game 6, and Thomas Bryant had to come in and really kind of, provide some significant minutes to help the Pacers get that lead extended and things like that. But, Miles is a team first guy. He went through some ups and downs, obviously, throughout his career, and a lot of trade rumors and a lot of not knowing what his role was supposed to be with Domantas Sabonis on the floor with him. But he never really once complained. He went to the media a few different times and kind of expressed some frustrations indirectly, didn't say anything specifically, but you could just tell, like, right before when they got, I think it was the year they got Halliburton, that next season, there was a lot of rumors about him potentially going to the Los Angeles Lakers. It was like him and Buddy Hield could be going to the Lakers for Russell Westbrook and all these draft picks. Like that was the big talking point. And he did a podcast with Woj. And the thing that he said there was like, yeah, he talked about the Lakers for like a hot minute, right? He just brought it up and just made a joke about it. And so, I think that he was feeling kind of like, what is my role here? What am I supposed to be? But he really bought into playing with Tyrese Halliburton. And he's talked about it. Like having a true point guard has really made a difference for him because he's not just getting, these little touches every once in a while. It's let's run this pick and roll, this pick and pop, and they have great synergy together. So for Miles, you couldn't be happier for anybody else because he's been through the thick and thin of everything with this group and this organization. And for him to be rewarded with this and for Rick Carlisle to believe in him, his beautiful letter that he wrote in the Players Tribune, if you have not read that, it's about a 10 to 15 minute read. It'll take you some time, but it is just a beautiful reflection of his time here in Indiana. And I think he summed it up perfectly in there. But, I was one that was banging the drum. We got to trade Miles Turner. I don't see it with this guy. I don't see what his ceiling is going to be. I feel like he's kind of already maxed out. And then all of a sudden they trade Sabonis and he just looked like a totally different player. So now I'm banging the drum for Miles Turner to stay here, not to be traded. And I got the hashtag "Don't take Miles Turner for granted" all over my Twitter because that's just how I feel. Even if he isn't playing great basketball, he still provides so much to this team with what he does on the floor and off the floor too. I mean, he is great for this team.
And Cody, before I let you go on that, I mean, I definitely, as an Indiana Pacer fan, and I'm sure almost every single person agrees, you want Miles Turner to stick around, obviously, because he's, hometown hero, really. But, I might have a differing opinion about how much the Pacers should be paying him this offseason in regards to, I mean, if you asked if you asked me before the playoffs started, I probably would have said do whatever the heck it takes to keep him around. Now, after the playoffs have gone away, I'm kind of like, I'm still not really tempted to maybe go over that salary tax or luxury tax, whatever we need to. But that's a discussion for another time. But I know obviously everyone wants to, keep him around because obviously he's reliable. But, as far as getting max value for him, that might be a different discussion.
Well, I mean, just think about it this way, Derek. What are you going to get in return? I mean, if you don't bring him back, who's your starting
Exactly.
center? Thomas Bryant, Tony Bradley, Isaiah Jackson coming off an Achilles
Yeah.
injury, a draft pick you get with like the 18th, 20th, 23rd pick, I think is what they have. I mean, not even thinking about the draft
Right.
at this point, but I'm just saying, like, if you don't bring him back, there's not a lot of other options out
Mhm.
there. And the only way they could even make it make sense a little bit is if they did a sign and trade and got another center back in a trade. But yeah, I don't think you need to mess with this. I mean, you've got something good going here. And who knows what happens in this series? We're kind of previewing it or talking about it before the final starts. But what if they win this thing, right? Like, what if they
Right.
win the NBA Finals? Like, it would be dumb not to run it back, even if it does cost you. You can figure stuff out later with financially because they have till the end of the next trade deadline, or I should say, till the next trade deadline to get under the tax. So they could bring him back, be like a first or second apron team, but then figure out maybe X player's not providing what we need them to do. Let's make a salary cut right here and trade that to a team with space. So there's different ways they can do it. They don't have to be under the first or second apron by the start of the season, just by the end of the trade deadline.
Awesome. Well, Alex, I just have one more for you. And Derek, I don't know if you have any more, but you mentioned the NBA Finals, so I think we can go there for a second. What in your mind, because obviously we know what Oklahoma City can do. They were the best team, in the West this year. Like, we know what they're capable of. But for Indiana to have a chance to win this thing, what do you need to see them do on a consistent basis in order to bring home a championship and beat, the best team in basketball since January and pretty much the entire season?
Yeah, this is a tall task. I mean, OKC is unbelievable, and I think if you include their regular season wins plus their playoff wins, they've won 80 games already this season. So they are a giant, and it's going to be tough. The Pacers are going to have to play the David role, and they're taking down Goliath, right? Like, this is what it's going to have to be like for him because it's going to be difficult. I think that Tyrese Halliburton is going to have his hands full. They're going to attack him relentlessly on defense, and then offensively, he's going to be dealing with Lou Dort to start out, and then when Lou Dort wants to take a breather, here comes Cason Wallace. Here comes Alex Caruso. He's not going to get a break. There is no weakness when it comes to the perimeter defense of the Oklahoma City Thunder, but it's really going to show us what Tyrese is made of. And I think we already know that Tyrese is a special player, but I think this is going to pull something out of him that maybe we haven't seen yet before, just having to fight through all this stuff. And if there's one thing I've learned about this playoff run, it's that Rick Carlisle knows how to make the proper adjustments to get his team, figure things out with what the other team's doing, right? So I think that when we see how they defend Tyrese Halliburton, there's going to be some challenges there, but I think they're going to figure it out. I think Pascal Siakam, if he's going to be guarded by Chet Holmgren to start things out, you're talking about a guy that's in his second year, but like some of the people consider already like one of the top defensive bigs in the league. Now you got a veteran Pascal Siakam who just won the Eastern Conference MVP of the conference finals MVP going up against a second year guy. How does age and veteran leadership play against youth in this great team? So I think your two stars have to be your two stars, and 3-point shooting is going to have to be key here for the Pacers. They're going to have to hit their shots, and Oklahoma City is not a great rebounding team. So I think that if they can crash the offensive glass a little bit more, give themselves some second opportunities, that's going to help them win this series. But Shea is going to be Shea, and I think we've seen the Pacers do a very good job of allowing other teams' best players to kind of get their own, but limiting other players on those teams from going off. When you've seen them lose, it's when other players have big games in addition to the star having the big plays. So containing Jalen Williams, containing Chet Holmgren, containing all those other guys out there. So that to me is key. But yeah, I mean, Indiana's got their hands full, but we've seen them, do things that people didn't expect them to do already this playoff run. So why stop believing?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Alex, so much, man, for your time and coming on. It's going to be a blast, man. I'm so excited. What's going to happen here, we'll have to see. But yeah, man, anything new that's coming out for you? Obviously, a lot to talk about here around the Pacers. But what's some stuff people can be looking for from you and your content?
Yeah, for sure. So we have Bob Kravitz, BobKravitz.com, former Pacers beat writer, Indianapolis Colts writer. He's a columnist for the Indy Star. So he joined me for an interview just to kind of talk about this series as well. And then on Tuesday night, we will have Keith Smith from Spot Track, who does a great job covering the NBA at large. coming on to talk about this series. And then our friends over from the Blue Wire Podcast Network, the Uncontested Podcast, covering the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're going to be doing a crossover podcast with them. And one of the segments we're going to be doing is me and my co-host Facci will be going back and forth with them and doing a little bit of a draft here, drafting the most important players for this series. So I think people are going to get a fun interaction right there. Drafts are always fun on podcasts, but then talking about those players and how they can impact the series will give us more opportunities to dive into stuff. So a different way of kind of doing a preview instead of just your standard, hey, here's our finals preview type thing. So just trying to have fun and change it up, but plenty of content.
Well, guys, if you haven't already, what are you doing? Go check out Alex and Facci and all they do over there at Setting the Pace. Alex, really appreciate your time, man. We'll have to do it again soon.
All right, Cody.
Absolutely.
All right, Derek.
Well, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Pacers.